everyone, and thank you for joining us on Take Two Radio. I'm Pam, your host, and tonight I have with me, you know what, I think I'm going to combine yours and David's name because I always have to try to remember who's with me, so I'm going to call you Sab Dave. How about Sab Dave?
I'll help you.
Now, I have Sabina with me, if you couldn't figure it out by her voice.
Hello. Oh, man.
Oh, good day, bad day. How's things going with you?
Pretty good. Even though it's cloudy, it's pretty good.
Yeah, no whining. I'm gonna get to our guest now because you're not gonna whine about your weather. But our special guest tonight is an actress, a producer, a director, an aerialist, a trapeze artist, an acrobat. Oh my gosh, I'm tired just saying that.
I know.
Please welcome Branca Ferrazo.
Hey, thank you for
doing?
having me.
You must be so busy. I mean, with everything that you're involved in, my gosh. Do you sleep?
I do actually. I do sleep very, very well. I've been sleeping a few hours recently, but it's all good because I meditate, so I get all my rest during my meditation.
You know, I've always wanted to try that and just haven't gotten around to it. But I bet people have said that they feel like they've gotten a lot of sleep after they do it.
Yeah, it does give you a lot of like what we call deep rest that you don't necessarily get during sleep. So I've noticed a big difference every time that I've gone on and off and back to meditation. I realize I'm more rested after that. So yeah, I definitely recommend it. I didn't think I would be talking about meditation, but there you go.
Yeah.
Just improvise, you know.
Well, I have to say you're probably the most flexible guest we've had on.
Well, I try. I try to stretch daily, and you know it does help with what I do for work. So
exactly. Well, how did you get into being an aerialist and acrobatics and all that?
Well, I was always in love with gymnastics as a child, and so I did some gymnastics when I was a child, and then later on, I mean, I had already started doing theater, and so I loved just performing in general. And my parents went to see Cirque-du-Soliel when that was back in '98, and they were in New York. And they fell in love with this show, Kidam, and they came back to Brazil, and they brought the DVD of the show and the making of the show, and they said to me and my sister, they said, "Oh my gosh, you have to do this. This is so you." And my mother specifically said, the silks, you know, the fabric is what you have to do.
Uh-huh.
And I love the idea, and I fell in love with when I watched the making of the show, and I just fell in love with it because it just combined my two passions, you know, with movement and performance and, you know, and acting. And so that's when I just fell in love and we're very lucky that we found a place that was literally a 5-minute walk from our house, and there was not much that was a 5-minute walk from our house, so we were very, very lucky to find that place. And so that was back in '98. Yeah, that's when we started climbing ropes and fabric and all that jazz, you know.
Well, I'll tell you, I watched one of your videos, and I was so amazed. Do you have a net under you when you do that?
When you're rehearsing or training, you always have a mat underneath because, you know, safety comes first, and it's the most important thing that you have to, when you're training or learning something or just exploring new technique, you have to make sure that you're doing everything close to the ground and making sure that you understand everything that you're doing before you go up there and perform. But usually a lot of performances don't even have a mat underneath. The thing with fabric or rope or even static trapeze is that you can't really put any lunges or yourself and you get tangled. But if you had another harness around your waist or something around you to keep you safe. But when you do swinging trapeze, which is something I've done as well, that you have to have a lunge, and because you're swinging like 30 feet off the ground, and if you were to make a mistake, which, you know, it's absolutely possible, then you would just fly off and there's nothing below you to save you. With flying trapeze, you always have a net, which is good. But with fabric or rope, a lot of the times you put a mat underneath, and sometimes they don't. So you have to really be confident in what you do and like really practice it with all the safety nets and mats underneath before you can go up there and perform.
Wow. Yeah. Well, you do it well. I mean, from what I've seen in that video, it's just really, honestly amazing. What do you use when you're doing it with the silk or the fabric, as you call it, so you don't slip? You know, like when you're tying it around your ankle and your feet and that. I mean, is there some kind of traction on your feet?
Well, I mean, different people have more need or less need to use something to make it less slippery. Fabric is more slippery than rope, but it all depends on what you're doing. But we do have something called rosin, which we just put anywhere that you're going to be needing it, like the hands or your ankles if you're doing anything like that, or if you're climbing with the back of your knees, then you maybe need to put a little rosin there. If you're doing toe climbs, you put it between your toes and all that. So it's you get messy, but it's quite important because it can be, and depending on even like weather conditions, it might be a little bit more. I remember when I was doing a lot of fabric that when I was training in Canada, especially in the winter, like it's so slippery. Everything's so hard because it's so slippery. Right. And then when I was practicing in Brazil and it was summer and it was so hot and humid and it was just everything's so sticky, but it also made it really hard because you just don't want to do anything because everything's just sticking to you when you don't want to. So it's rosin really does help, and it's one of the most important things that people acrobats use use on their apparatuses.
Yeah, you definitely need something.
Yeah, your skin can be, you can sweat, or a lot of elements come into place that can make it a little bit more difficult. So anything you can use to help.
Right.
Exactly.
So did you have to overcome any fear of heights before becoming an aerialist, or did it just come naturally?
I guess you could say it came naturally. I never thought of so much of a fear. I always joked, actually, when people would ask if I had a fear of falling, and I said I always had more of a fear of doing like groundwork, and I think, and I joked that it was because when I'm up there, I'm so far away from the ground that I'm not even thinking of falling there because it's so far from me, But the ground is actually closer, and it's a little bit more more scary to me than going up there. And the thing is, I do mostly work by myself. I don't work with a partner, but there's a lot of aerialists who do duos and all that. But when you work by yourself, you have to trust yourself, and so it's fewer elements for you to be, worried about. But you just need to make sure that you've trained well enough and that you're really confident in that technique that you can go and perform. That you only perform something that you're really confident and comfortable with.
Yeah, see, I wouldn't be able to do it. I'd be too scared. I would not be able to trust myself, But that's
you never know. You might surprise yourself.
Yeah, I don't want to try it. I think it's too late in the game for me, anyhow.
No.
Yeah, I enjoy watching it so much. And I read you trained with Cirque-du-Soleil's Andrew Simard. Have you performed in a cirque production, and if so, which one or ones?
Well, André, he's been with Cirque-du-Soleil for many, many years, and he's actually the inventor or the creator of the silks, of the fabric as we know it today. Oh. And so, so it was a treat to really work with him. And so me and my sister used to go like every summer, every winter to Montreal, and we had full support of our parents, which was amazing. And André, so he created this company which was just aerial, and it was like a NOF company of Cirque du Soleil, just like an aerial side of Cirque du Soleil, if you can call it that. And it wasn't it didn't last for long because it was a very small troupe, and we just did aerial basically. And so we got to perform in Venice, Italy, at the Biennale di Venezia, which was amazing. And so it was that was a special time in our lives. My sister and I were performing together at the time, and we were still in high school, so we couldn't commit to a full touring schedule because we never wanted to drop out of school. But we definitely, it was an experience that we'll never forget. It was just a beautiful summer, in Italy, and it was just magical.
Wow, that is amazing.
Just doing all of that, I bet it keeps you in great shape. I mean, do you have to do any other type of exercise?
You don't have to. We're kind of, once you start doing circus, you can become a little obsessed with doing just the circus. Mm-hmm. And it takes a lot from you. Like a training day for me, it's usually not less than, let's say, 2.5 hours because I do an hour of warm-up and stretching, and then at least 1 hour of the actual work on the rope or, whatever apparatus I'm working on. And then after that, I try to do more stretching and conditioning. So it could be that's a short day of 2.5 hours. And, when I was in Canada, I was training. I was there for like 7 hours in the day in the studio because, that was what I was breathing, basically, which was really nice. But yeah, it's then of course, if you want, I like to do some cardio if I find time, which at the moment I'm not finding time, but cardio does help for, you have to build endurance to be able to do a 6-minute act up in the air because, that takes, especially if you don't have a lot of height and you're doing, like right now I'm working on a rope act and you have to climb a lot, like all the time you have to climb to do another trick because you lose height every time that you do something, some trick. And then you have to climb up again and do something else. So you need to make it, to be creative about how you incorporate the climbs into your choreography. And then, of course, you have to condition so that you're, some kind of cardio conditioning, be it doing cardio outside of practice or repeating or doing your act like twice in a row so that, doing it once for performance is easy. Because you can't just do it once and otherwise you'd be very tired afterwards. One of my coaches always tells me, go do chin-ups, like right after you run your act, do chin-ups, and then you'll be done,
Oh.
So.
Yeah, when we watch this kind of videos or even a live show, we don't think of everything that goes on behind it, so it's very interesting.
Yeah.
Now,
it definitely takes work.
Yeah. After I watched that video, I watched one of you in Queen Margaret Henry VI. It was part 3 because that was the one that came up. It seems that almost every actor at some time or another does Shakespeare. Why is that? Is it a favorite thing or is it the best teaching platform?
Well, Shakespeare is just like, what is cool it is just to even watch something from Shakespeare and, read it. It's a whole different language to learn, and it's just so fascinating. And I was very lucky to have been able to study in England, and so I went to a theater school in England, one of the most renowned schools there, and that was a very lucky thing for me to be a part of. And, it's just, I feel like if an actor has a chance to work on a Shakespeare text, it's a huge, it really does teach you a lot, and it's so fun to do it, and to be on stage and to have this different language. Like it's just a completely different experience from working on film. And I miss it. Like I've been craving it recently, actually.
Really?
I love. That was one of my favorite things to do. Even though I'm so far from the age of Queen Margaret, it was a school kind of experiment, but I can't wait for when I am the right age, and maybe one day I can perform that on stage because it's a really great role.
Right. Well, there's so many other Shakespearean plays you could do as well.
Yes.
So just call up one of those theaters and say, "Hey, I'm ready. Let's go."
I definitely I've always enjoyed like doing everything that I've done with Shakespeare. I did a whole summer intensive in London with Shakespeare, and that was just brilliant for me as well. And so I definitely value my time there.
Well, you also started your own production company called RAW, Real Authentic Wisdom Productions. How did you come up with the name of your company, and why did you think to start it now?
Well, it's actually funny how I came up with the name because I was going through a phase where I was actually eating a lot of raw foods, which was
my gosh.
I'm very much into health, so and to me, like just the name of raw has always, that just anything that's raw and in their natural state and all of that, like it just